This is something that happened to my brother years ago. He was a teenager when my parents sent him to Mexico because of the gangs. I went a year without seeing, and when I finally did, we had a lot of catching up. As we spoke throughout the night, he told me the most scariest story I had ever heard. He told me that he would always get home drunk, but that night he didn't even know how he made it home. He said he remembers falling back onto his bed, and he thought he heard the door open and close when he lifted his head to look if someone had entered the room. He said he felt dizzy. Blaming it on the alcohol, he was going to get up to lock the door. Only when he tried to get up, he said that the bed was not on the floor. He then saw something from the corner of his eye and turns to look towards what he described as the devil. He said the devil was huge, that he didn't understand how he was even in the room. He said the devil looked mad from the color of skin being flaming red, and the horns looked like tree trunks. He said he didn't realize that he had been yelling until he heard my grandmother enter the room, and he heard her yell at the devil. My grandmother was a woman that stood at 4'9", yet my brother said she sounded as giant as the devil. She told the devil that he was not welcomed into her home and to leave. My brother said he was in shock when the devil disappeared. Then he had forgotten that the bed had been floating off the ground, so when it landed back down, he tried to jump off the bed. But my grandmother told him to stay, and my brother obeyed. He lied there stiff aboard as he heard my grandmother begin reciting the rosary. He said he had never slept like he did that night before, nor has he slept like that after. Apparently, that wasn't the first encounter with the devil himself, and this one was scarier than the first. He said he woke up to somebody pulling him by his feet. When he looked down, he saw the devil dragging him off his bed. However, my brother had the Holy Cross hanging right by the door and was able to grab it before the devil could go any further. As soon as he showed it to the devil, it disappeared. He said he woke up right outside his bedroom. Now this story, I told him he had to have made it up. The last story was confirmed by my grandmother. My brother told me that when I got back home to talk to one of his friends. This friend was a friend of the family. We had known him for years and kind of took him in after his mother had passed. So I did just that. His told me that he thought he was still sleeping, but he was very much awake seeing my brother being dragged by something. He said that he couldn't move, so all he could do was watch as my brother was being dragged. The frustration of not being able to do nothing is one thing, but not being able to move, period, was a whole other kind of frustration. He said he yelled for my brother to grab the cross. Later, my brother said he didn't hear his friend. Either way it goes, that was 2 encounters that my brother had with the devil, both confirmed by witnesses. He had also confessed that, since he could remember, he had always had dreams of demons and the devil, but that after that night my grandmother prayed over him, they slowly but surely began to fade. I haven't asked him about them recently, but then again, we don't talk about our dreams anymore. So one of my closest friends growing up lived in a house that was, beyond a reasonable doubt, haunted AF. The house was definitely somewhere around a century old, or at least now it is, and our town was situated in a very woodsy suburb. He and every member of his family had experiences there. Several of our friends had their own experiences there, and I had my own too. Honestly, it would be impossible to try and condense it down into one experience, and I believe it's worth sharing the accounts I can remember. I'll start with the least scary one, which was thankfully my own, and then move to the ones worth telling. During high school, my parents went on a vacation, and for a few days I stayed at this particular house of my friend. Let's call him Paul. I stayed in Paul's room in a sleeping bag on the floor while he slept in his bed. One morning, I woke up to someone whispering in my ear, like directly into my ear. My name. You need to leave. Now. It did not say this super maliciously, almost more of a warning. It definitely woke me up though, and immediately I'm thinking Paul was fucking with me as he frequently did. But I turned around to my right where he was sleeping and realized he was completely out. I said, "What?" to him, thinking he was joking around and he didn't wake up. He was definitely asleep. It was quiet and still too early for even Paul's parents to be up. Then it hit me, as it still hits me today. I heard the whisper in my left ear, and Paul was on my right side. Paul had other experiences in that same room, a few I can remember off the top of my head. For a time, he told me he suffered from sleep paralysis on a consistent basis. He would see demons in his room and would be unable to move. He told me that, very frequently in his sleep, the standing fan by his bed would become a demon girl, and he would wake up with a jolt of adrenaline having punched or thrown the fan down to the ground. He told me he would sometimes see someone standing in the closet his bed faced, both asleep and awake. Oddly enough, his sleep paralysis significantly decreased as soon as he moved out of that place. That floor, the second floor where Paul, his parents, and 2 of his 4 sisters slept, was spooky. I remember getting weird feelings up there. One of his sisters claimed to see the ghost of a little boy in their bathroom. His mom once opened the closet in her bedroom to find the same little boy standing in there, looking up at her and asking for his mom. I heard about that one when I was in middle school, and it always creeped me out. It's always scarier when the adults see them too. Before my own experience, I generally thought Paul was just trying to fuck with me when he would tell me about these other experiences. Most of our other friends were the same way, thinking Paul was full of shit. Even after my own experience, at times I thought I just as easily could have dreamt it up. But then a few of those same friends, some of them complete non-believers beforehand, had their own experiences, and that changed my whole idea of the house. Once a year, Paul and his family would take a trip and have someone take care of their 2 dogs. One of our mutual friends came over to do just that one day. When she got there that evening to feed the dogs, the house was dark and empty. For some context, the dogs were being fed near the kitchen, and adjacent to the kitchen was the dining room, which led further away into the entryway, and after that, a small living room. Well, not long after feeding the dogs, she heard a blood-curdling scream, a goddamn shriek, coming from that living room, like someone was inside with her. She booked it outside with the dogs, checked for intruders, and saw no one was there. I'm pretty sure after that she called Paul, told him what happened, and he laughed and said, "Yeah, shit like that happens sometimes." A couple years later, one of the bigger doubters in our group, who thought all of us were full of shit, had his own experience. Paul hosted a fair amount of parties back then, and usually we would use his basement to avoid any sort of noise complaints. So all of us are in the basement having a good time, and this particular friend of ours decides to run up and grab another drink from upstairs. Mind you, this friend is not the kind of guy to get completely fucked up, like he'll only ever have a beer or 2 at most. So for all intents and purposes, he's sober. He goes up and the ground floor was completely empty, as everyone is in the basement. There was a porch directly outside the dining room / entryway / living room, and it extended long ways across the back of the house. As our friend was walking into the dining room to grab a beer off the table, he sees a tall, grim-looking woman standing on the porch outside, looking through the window directly at him. He knows something is wrong because she's sort of featureless and also standing outside by herself looking inside. He takes his eyes off her one moment, looks back, and she's gone. A few days later, he tells Paul what happened, and Paul tells him how he and his siblings have seen that same woman before. Our friend becomes a believer. The basement was creepy as hell, but I can only think of one thing that ever happened down there. It was more of a storage cellar than anything. We still used it for parties and just generally hanging out, but it was so cluttered with random shit that whole areas of the room were completely cut off. At some point in college, one summer when I was back home, Paul and his family were doing the annual Throw Old Shit Away Fest, and he openly invited some friends to come help. I came one day, and when I got there, Paul's dad nonchalantly told me, "You get to see the secret room." Turns out that in the far corner of the basement, behind a bunch of clutter, was a little storage closet nobody, besides maybe Paul's parents, knew about. We investigated it that day, and in it we found a bunch of random old shit. I can't remember everything exactly. I don't even know if Paul's family knew what this stuff was, but among all of it, I specifically remember finding this very old-fashioned vintage music box. You know, like the one in The Conjuring with the dancing ballerina. That kind of thing. We decided it was creepy and didn't want anything to do with it and left it in that closet. Well, on a different day, when I thankfully was not there, Paul and another friend were cleaning out the basement when suddenly that same music box started playing by itself from behind the door of the closet. They were alone and had not been in that closet all day. They bolted up the stairs. At the top of the house, there were 2 small bedrooms, both belonging to Paul's older sisters. This is the last one I will share, as it's the story that stuck with me the longest. The second oldest sister once had a vivid and intense dream in which she herself was being exorcised. A demon was being forced out of her as a group of priests were standing over her convulsing body, shouting verse at her, and she remembered it just being crazy intense. After enduring this for some time, she suddenly jolts herself awake and yells, and at that precise moment a rosary she kept hanging on her wall flies from its place, crashes to the floor and shatters into a bunch of pieces. Completely on its own. She was covered in sweat and completely terrified. No one else was in the room. Yeah, that place was fucking haunted. The thing that made me believe in ghosts. I've always believed in ghosts but never had a paranormal experience. I'd go ghost hunting as a kid and try to investigate graveyards and abandoned buildings, but never found anything. So in theory I wanted to believe, but because I hadn't seen anything myself I had my suspicions. Until I worked as this old as fuck Irish restaurant. The restaurant in question was located in Massachusetts and is hundreds of years old. The downstairs is a bar/restaurant and the upstairs is used as a function hall for weddings and events. I began working there as a server full-time in the winter of 2015. There's lots of old buildings in MA, so it wasn't out of the ordinary. It has the classic creaky floors and old feel to it. Within my first few days working there, I heard one of the older servers talking about the ghost upstairs, which obviously made me whip my head around and go, "This place is haunted. Tell me more." This server had been working here for years and she was like 60 years old, and she wasn't super keen to talk about. She had a matter-of-fact way of answering me. She said that yes, there's a presence upstairs and she just deals with it. When I pressed her for her info, she said sometimes when she goes up there to get something, she'll hear little kids playing or running around when there's no one there, and said she has seen a small child in the corner of her eye before, but she wouldn't give me much more. Well, now I was interested, so I started asking all the servers about it, and they were all like, "Oh yeah, upstairs is haunted." I had only been up there a few times with someone else during the daytime. Deaf creepy, but nothing particularly strange. But after hearing stories from other servers, I needed to go up there, lol. One of my friends worked as the bartender, and sometimes when she was closing, her boyfriend and some of his friends would come in and sit at the bar while she finishes up. So one night, it's a Sunday and I'm the closing server and she's the closing bartender. I'm finished for the night, so I'm having a drink at the bar, and her BF and two friends come in to join us. We start talking about the ghost upstairs and they agree to go with me. Now the way this place is set up is when you walk in the front door, there's a small reception area with two giant wooden barrels where we stack the menus. The menus are thick, heavy, leather books basically. This is important for later. Then you walk down a few stairs and enter the dining area. The bar is a big oval in the middle that has seating all around. The stairs to go upstairs are directly to the right when you enter the front door. So me, her boyfriend, and two of his friends proceed to go upstairs while she stays at the bar. There's also a regular customer there with her drinking and he stays at the bar. We go up and the lights are off, but we have our cell phone flashlights. There's normal restaurant music playing on the speakers at a normal volume, just classic background music. We're walking through in a tight group, just exploring between the tables. It is absolutely creepy, like how to describe it other than the air was heavy. We're talking amongst ourselves and making jokes, like, "Where's the ghost?" and "Hello, Mr. Ghost," etc. We're walking through and we're kind of like, okay, maybe there's not anything here, But then the music starts getting louder. And at first we're like, oh haha, it's obviously our friend downstairs doing this to be funny. But then it keeps getting louder, like blasting, like so loud it hurts your ears, like not funny. We all start sprinting for the stairs and come rushing down. We run into the dining area and we're like, dude, what the fuck, why did you put it so loud? And my friend is standing in the middle of the bar looking at us like we're insane, and she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And we're like, you just put the volume up to scare us, but it was so loud it hurt. And she looks at us and goes, the music control is over there. And she points all the way across the restaurant to a box on the wall. I haven't moved, I've been standing here closing my register, and we're all like, what? The regular at the bar confirms she didn't move. So now we're all riled up, talking about how scary that was and how obviously the ghost didn't like us. We're all sat around the bar discussing what happened, and the regular is telling us how he's heard stories about the upstairs ghost over the years. And he goes, sometimes when you talk about it, it makes it worse. All of a sudden, a stack of menus falls to the floor. The heavy leather book menus all the way over at the door. A whole stack of them tumble over. Like 10 to 12 menus, we're talking several pounds of books. The door was closed. There was no wind, and these things were heavy. We all just stare at each other and are like, okay, are you done closing the register yet? Time to go, time to go. It was wild. That was my only real encounter with a ghost. I stopped working at that restaurant not long after, but I would love for a paranormal crew to go in there one day. I now believe these things exist. I was running on the trails at the Nathan Hale Homestead, 18th century farmhouse and property of a Revolutionary War hero in CT, which is only about a 10-minute drive from my grandmother's lake house. I could not find a map of the trails anywhere online, and there didn't seem to be any signage at the place. Just a bunch of random mountain bike trails in the woods. I was only going to run 4 miles, so I estimated that I would run for about 30 minutes, using my watch to keep myself on track. So I ran around the trails for a while and nothing seemed too out of the ordinary. It was about 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, and the only sounds were the distant hums of Route 31, birds chirping, and the occasional squirrel or deer that scampered off whenever I came near. The trail seemed to wind around a lot and, if not for my better-than-average directional skills, humble brag, I could have easily gotten lost. About 20 minutes in, I saw something strange about 50 meters off. A finely polished, light-colored wooden coffin. I was a little weirded out to say the least and waited until I got closer for a better look. I rounded a corner where several old tree stumps blocked my view, only to find that the coffin had disappeared. Where it should have been was a clump of ferns. I turned around shortly thereafter and made my way back to my car. I was maybe a half-mile out when I heard a very distinctive knocking on a nearby tree to the rhythm of "shave and a haircut." I was a little spooked but chalked it up to be a woodpecker or something. However, not 30 seconds later, there it was on a completely different tree up ahead somewhere. And knocking again came. I picked up the pace. The trail widened a little and I could see way ahead the entrance to the parking lot where my car was. There it was again, on a tree seemingly right next to me. Again, knocking came. I truly started freaking out and started to book it back to the lot. I was nearing the opening when time seemed to slow down. All of a sudden it felt like the temperature dropped about 20 degrees, the birds stopped singing, and my simple Timex watch started to malfunction, making all sorts of beeping noises and the numbers glitching on the screen. The beat sounded impossibly loud this time, like it was hacked into every surrounding tree with a hand axe. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me as I anticipated hearing the two bits of knocking refrain and perhaps worse. I burst into the parking lot and everything went back to normal. The temperature was back in the mid-70s and birds were chirping away. I looked at my watch, only to discover that it had gone completely blank. I stood there and stared at it until it flashed 12 o'clock Monday, January 1st. My watch had reset itself. It had never done this before. I got into the car and started the engine. The clock on the radio display read 12 o'clock. That couldn't be right. It should have been around 9:30 or 9:45 at the latest. I put in reverse and backed up to where I could clearly make my way out to the main road. However, as I was about to throw the car into drive as it sat there, I heard a sharp rapping sound on the back window, like someone hitting it with their knuckles. There was no one else in the parking lot when I had finished my run. No cars, no nothing. I didn't dare look back and hightailed it back to my grandmother's house. I have no idea what could have caused this series of events and still cannot explain it to this day. This was 3 years ago during my senior year of high school. My hometown is extremely boring and pretty rural, so when my friends and I want to find something to do, we usually go out to the country to do it. One night, about 4 of my friends and I had been hanging out all day and decided to go to Eden's Tunnel, a supposedly haunted tunnel very close by, at around 11:30 to look for spooky shit. We all met up at a Kroger's and took the same Jeep Cherokee to get there. We ended up getting lost on a back road for about 30 minutes, landing us in some dark dirt road that gave everyone a sick feeling in their stomach. After about 30 minutes of noping the fuck out of there, we eventually pulled up the tunnel. We all got out, it was pitch black, and there wasn't a single sound. We walked through the tunnel, looking at all of the graffiti and listening to our echoes, feeling safe in such a large group. Then, nothing happened. It was a fun time, actually. We got back in the car and headed back to the Kroger to drop everyone off. But my car was further in town, so my friend Dylan said he would drive me to my car, where the scary shit happened. It was around 1 a.m. at this point, but neither of us were really tired and the roads were completely empty. We kept up a conversation, completely taking the tunnel out of our minds for the entire drive back to my car. Once we got further in town where the roads were lit up, We weren't even 10 blocks from my car when I got a weird feeling. Dylan and I had paused our conversation, and I was looking out the window when I heard tapping and scratching. I figured it was some object moving around in his back seat, but I caught a glimpse of something in his rear-view mirror. Even then, I thought it was just a shadow, but the noise happened again, the same time that I absolutely 100% saw something crawl in his back seat. No fur, not big enough to be human, just dark skin and small limbs. It moved up the seat, then behind it, fast. I immediately looked over to Dylan, who had his hands gripped tight on the steering wheel, and he had tears running down his face. His eyes were glued on the rear mirror. "Oh fuck. Please tell me you saw that." At this point, I was not just seeing shit. "Dylan, holy fucking shit. Please pull over." He looked at me, then said, "Don't turn around." We started passing a Cheddar's with a huge, empty, and very brightly lit parking lot where he jerked the car over, crossing 3 lanes and slammed his brakes in the middle of the parking lot. We were stopped. Ready. Don't let anything get out. Then we both jumped out of the car and slammed the doors behind us as quickly as possible, keeping our eyes on the car to make sure nothing ran out. And nothing did. We stood there for a moment discussing what we saw, and it turns out we both saw the same thing. "Probably a raccoon or something, I hope," I said. "I'll fucking kill it for scaring me so bad," Dylan replied. We opened the trunk first and dug through everything, and nothing. We opened the side doors, nothing. There was absolutely nothing in the car. Nothing ran out, nothing moved. We just stood there in disbelief and ended up walking back to my car, where I gave him a ride home. My house was built in 1904. It is a single-family home, wood frame setting on a concrete block foundation. I have been living here for about 12 years. Of all the weird things that my siblings and me have seen or heard in this house, this one event is my favorite. This happened to my brother. About 10 years ago, my brother and his best friends had started a garage band playing mostly Spanish rock, alternative music, but in Spanish. His friends could only get together on Sunday afternoons. They would practice into the early evening. They would usually call it quits by 8 p.m. This was the time I usually showed up and went to bed because I worked the graveyard shift. This happened in late fall, so the days were getting shorter. They had just finished a long session when the decision to head to someone else's house came about. My brother handed his car keys to his buddy so they could load up the equipment. Everyone had filed out of the basement. The tricky part was that they needed to walk all the way to the back of the basement, up the back stairs, through the kitchen doorway, down the hall into the living room and out into the front porch. Everyone was outside sitting in my brother's truck waiting for him. My brother was walking up the back stairs when he remembered that he had left his pancakes in a to-go container sitting on a speaker in the basement. He made the decision to go back. Now the basement is not clean with full sight lines. There had been partitions made, and the boiler and main heating unit are right smack in the middle. So after my brother walks back, he is about to retrieve his food container, when out of the corner of his eye he sees it. It is a shadowy figure, right at his peripheral vision. This feeling of dread and uneasiness washed over my brother. We had been taught that if you are in the presence of a spirit or ghost and you felt a bad vibe, to say quick prayer or to cuss at it. My brother chose the latter. He basically just told it, "Hey, fuck you. I don't have time for this shit." My brother started to walk to the back of the basement and briskly up the stairs, closing doors and turning off lights as he was walking out. The last light switch is on the opposite side of the front door. Luckily, the door was open and the light from the street lamp was flooding the living room with its amber light. My brother said he felt something at his back, But at no point did he turn around. As he flicked the last switch, the living room went dark, as the rest of the house. As he stepped out, he pulled on the door, closing it behind him. Still holding his food container in one hand, he jogged down the few porch steps. He walked towards the front gate. Our house resides far from the main street, essentially having a large front yard but no rear garage. As he closed the gap between himself and his friend-laden truck, he kind of smiled and thought things over in his head, mad at himself for spooking out when there was no reason. He climbed into the driver's side of the truck, putting on his seatbelt and getting ready to pull out of the parking spot directly in front of the house, when one of his friends asked, "Hey, wait, what about your brother? Isn't he coming with us?" My brother answered, "What do you mean? He went to work early tonight, he is already gone. Do you see his car anywhere?" The next question they asked, "So then who was walking behind you when you were leaving the house?" Okay, I haven't told anyone this story since I was a child, because when I told my cousins what was happening, it scared them really bad, and I got my second only whooping with a belt by my dad. As an adult, I don't mention it because I just don't know what it was, and I don't want other adults to think I'm nuts. When I was in second grade, I woke up one summer night, dead of night, to a woman floating through my window into my bedroom. Oddly, I wasn't scared. I just sat up and asked, "What are you doing here?" I remember she answered me, but oddly enough, the next morning I couldn't remember what she said or even what her voice sounded like. I couldn't even remember what she looked like. So next I said to her, in true 8-year-old fashion, "Well, you better get going because my dad might wake up and then he'll be mad." She slipped out of my already cracked open bedroom door and I went back to sleep. Sounds like sleep paralysis, right? Wrong. The next day I was really excited that I had my own fairy godmother, and I named her Crystal. And I thought in my head, "Please come back. Come back and wake me up at dawn so we can talk." I shit you not. The next morning, just as it was getting light outside, I hear someone whispering my name. I realized that this shit was real, and she was a ghost, and I froze. I stayed as still as I could, not even able to breathe, and just prayed as hard as I could, "Go away, go away, go away." I could feel her right by my head. As I'm typing this, tears are coming to my eyes. Okay, happened once, coincidence, right? Nope. Every time I would get brave and say out loud to her, before going to bed in my room, "Okay, come this time, I swear I won't get scared," she would come, whispering my name, and I would almost shit my pants in fear and never open my eyes. So at this point I'm thinking, still could be night terrors, right? I mean, our eyes have receptors sensitive to light that wake us up, thus causing me to wake up at dawn and hallucinate this shit. Here's where shit gets real. Next summer, I tell a friend that this is going on while we were camping together. She doesn't believe me, says to me, "Okay, ask her to come tonight. We're sleeping in same tent and my friend wants to see for herself." So I do. And at dawn, I hear her calling my name and my friend's name. We don't move. She leaves. And we both sit up and my friend heard her too. She freaks out, tells her parents later that day sobbing. I get in trouble for scaring the shit out of kids with ghost stories. Later that summer, I told my cousin this story, and before that night, she freaks out, tells her mom, and I get my ass beat for telling ghost stories. I got pissed about said beating and angrily said out loud, "I got in trouble because of you, and I never want to see you ever again." And I haven't, ever, thankful to God. And I just don't think about it anymore, and never when I'm alone at night. So this happened, I think, 15 or so years ago when my grandfather passed away. In my culture, the dead are cremated and there are elaborate ceremonies performed. The body carried by people while chanting the name of a Hindu god. Ram after it has been cleaned, clothed, and some ceremonial colors put on it. I was never very close to my grandfather. I barely remember ever having much to talk with him, but my parents say I used to talk to him a lot as a child. Anyway, when he died, I didn't really know much about him other than that he was the patriarch of the family and everybody respected him. I was barely 10 years old then and was supposed to stay at an aunt's house. Sneaky that I was, I managed to follow my mother when she left for my grandfather's house, unaware that I was a few steps behind her. Anyway, the ceremony starts. There's a lot of crying and soon 4 people, including my father, my uncles, and someone I cannot now remember, carry the body on top of a structure made of bamboo and wood. They chant throughout the way. Nobody noticed that I was following them. They reached the cemetery. There's a lot of crying and I got bored standing at a distance. It's almost dusk and sit, weirdly, on a nearby platform. I would later come to know that it is sort of a memorial for the deceased. Sometime between all this is happening, I fall asleep. Hours go by and when I wake up there is no one, just the last flames burning through pieces of wood. Panic. I look around to see if there's anyone, but there's no one. I start running towards the pyre, hoping perhaps some of my relatives might spot me by the fire and get hold of me. Again, no one. I start crying. I look around to see if I can find my way to the street. Cemetery was on the outskirts of the town, and it was huge to my tiny mind. Rows after rows of those memorials I mentioned earlier. It's almost dark and I can hear animals howling at a distance. While all this is happening, I have a creepy feeling that I am being watched. It sends a shiver down my spine, and to this I don't remember ever being so shit scared. It was such a dark and nauseating feeling, a sense of impending doom. I cry louder and start running. Little did I know that I was running deeper into the cemetery, farther from the road that would take me home. I reach the edge of the open ground and catch my breath near the tree line. I can hear faint voices coming from beyond the silhouette of the trees in front of me. Perhaps someone might be returning after gathering wood from there. I am again hit with this nauseating feeling, and it's stronger now. To top it all, every time I walk or run, it felt like I could hear footsteps, like someone right behind me. I turned around several times yet found no one. I was so afraid at that point that I thought I might die. I took a leap of faith and ran towards the trees. The sound of footsteps behind me grew louder, and it seemed like whoever it was near, almost at arm's length, like they could just reach out and catch hold of me. I am audibly sobbing and shouting for help. There's barely any light, but I remember hearing people in the distance. Suddenly, I'm in a clearing and see there's a community pond with a bathing area. I can see some people in my family and I ran towards. No matter how loud I tried to cry, there was no sound coming out of my mouth. Finally, an ant saw me and ran towards me. The last thing I remember before fainting is a hand on my shoulder and my body almost freezing on the spot. I was sick for a week after that, had nightmares for years, and in general stopped going to my grandfather's house or even the town. To this day, I find it difficult sleeping in the dark and sometimes wake up with a cold sweat and a creepy feeling on my shoulder like someone was holding on to me.